I must say, taking the incident out of it, I thought what Chris Scott said after the game, and I thought what Tom Stewart said right there is the only way and the best way to handle it. And that is immediate contrition, hand up, did the wrong thing, whatever the tribunal decides will be the outcome. I thought he handled that very classily today, Tom Stewart.
Yeah, it doesn't make it right, but being there on the day, the moment it happened, the play's going on, he was looking over. He was wanting to get over there just to check in with Dion. Yeah. And then the moment Dion was being carried off, he sprinted back over there. Dion and the trainers were in no state to listen to Tom, but he was trying to say, he just wanted to say, I'm sorry. You could see there on the day, what he wanted to do. So knew straight away the mistake he made. And I think 3's not enough. 5 would be heavy, but I'd cop 5 over 3. So, 4 sits about right, as you said earlier, Sam.
Yep, it sounds like
just had a caller ring through. Brooksy, clearly a Bulldogs fan. He said some of the examples of send-off
is this Scragger, Brooksy?
For the last 5 years. Indeed it is. Stewart on Prestia, Basher Healy on Jed Lamb, Bug on Mills, Andrew Gaff on Andrew Brayshaw, Cameron on Harris Andrews, and James Sicily taking Norton's headband off on the week.
Did you think he should have got fined for that?
Bulldog. I didn't like it, to be honest. I just don't think people should go near what other people are wearing.
Yeah, it was an interesting game from James Sicily. I thought he was badly beaten. It was an act of frustration in many ways. He was trying to get under his skin, but he was involved in a lot of push and shove, and he gave away about 3 or 4 goals with poor kicking errors, and they need him at his best to be competitive. And they were so exciting for the first 40 minutes of that game, and they fell away badly.
They did, and Liberatore, I thought, turned that game. So Jack Viney on Thursday night and Liberatore, Gerard, I don't know if they got the perfect 10s. Those two, have you got that
Libba
there?
got 10.
And did Jack Viney get the perfect 10?
Jack Viney got 10.
Yeah.
Sicily did get fined $1,000.
Yes.
By the way. Yep.
And Riley West, I thought, was the best game. It was a breakthrough game from him. He got 7 votes, and I think they were absolutely deserved. Sam Walsh got the 10. There's another 10. Liam Baker got 9. Tyson Stengel got 6 and Blitzarv's got 5. Tom Stewart got 4 only.
Did Stewart get 4 from one and 0 from the other?
0 from the other, not unexpectedly.
Oh. So Damien Hardwick's giving him 4 and Chris Scott's forgotten about it? Is that what's happened?
I don't think that's what happened.
Oh, I see.
Jake Lloyd got 10, which he was a very good player on the day. Ollie Florent, one of his better games. And Taylor Walker got 10. Oof. Darcy Cameron just continues to improve with 9 votes. And finally, Connor Rozee, he got the 10. I thought Touk Miller a little bit generous, him getting the 8. I didn't think it was Touk's best game.
We talk about Essendon. I read Mark Robinson's really strong column in the Herald Sun today. I thought he made a fairly poignant point, and that was they got beaten by West Coast, who haven't beaten anyone on Friday night, and yet no one was really talking about it.
No.
Lloydie, you're pretty careful with the words that you use. You used the word soulless on the AFL website today with Damo. Was there something about Friday night? Was it because it was off the back of a good performance that got you so flat?
It's been such a disappointing year, Sam. So, St Kilda was a spike the week before, but 3 wins, 11 losses, 78%. Like, that's across the year. So you can get up for a week, but then you want to see what happens the week after. And they won a lot of statistics, but still conceded 107 points. They're one of the worst contested ball sides in the comp. They're one of the worst.
Second last,
one of the worst tackling sides.
Last in tackles.
Last in the comp. So what are they? Who are they? What's their brand? What do they stand for?
Ben Rutten continuously says they want to be a pressure team.
Yeah, and remember we heard blue collar about a month ago.
Blue collar bombers.
So what's blue collar about all those numbers where they're ranked bottom 2, Gerard? So
do you buy into all this? You kind of started it, Gerard. Do you buy into this conversation around they have to look at Clarkson?
Well, if I'm in anybody's shoes that's had a poor season and Alistair Clarkson is available, I'm looking into Alistair Clarkson. I mean, I think that goes across the board. And I don't think that's any shock or horror. And I think the fact that an Essendon man like Lloydie says it gives it a lot more gravitas than if I say it. But Lloydie's he's worried about his footy club and he's worried about the mix, the leadership of the club clearly. And I think, it's a brave comment from Lloydie, but it's well founded, I think.
And I just feel like it'll be another year where they go, okay, we were pretty young. We were a young side. But you got to look deeper than that and go, what is going wrong with us? Why can't we? I look at some of the teams that are growing and what Carlton's done this year, what Fremantle's done, what Collingwood's done, the way the Suns are playing. They're improving.
Even though they lost yesterday, it was still the quality of performance.
Yeah, like Hawthorn are 4 wins, Adelaide are 5 wins, and Essendon are on 3 wins. Adelaide Crows 5 wins, Essendon are 3. And I made it about Ben Rutten yesterday because I don't like the way they're playing and the brand, but I'm big on this not being an internal review, which the club has spoken about. I'm massive on it being an external review. Yep. So the board says we need an external review to get to where our football club is at. And so suddenly the CEO can be reviewed. The coach is reviewed. The assistants are reviewed. The development coaches, the recruiting team, the fitness team, and the whole administration. I think everything needs to be looked at the club to look at, okay, what areas are we going well? And it might come out that the coach is coaching okay, but he's not being supported in certain areas. Yep. But the way they're doing it right now, I'm not sure what they're going to achieve.
The big contrast and the big disappointment, I think, for Ben was they played so well last week. And they played fantastically well last week. The side that they were playing, perhaps not, they weren't firing as you'd expect. But, I mean, up against the West Coast Eagles, even with their good players back, their form has been horrible. And the Bombers had no right to come back without the 4 points from that one.
No, and again, just I was talking at 6s and 7s with who's the way to defend the ground, and we heard Merritt said, we've worked on it this week and it was better, but then a week later had all the more inside 50s, yet conceded 107 points. They hadn't done that for 29 games, West Coast. Kennedy hadn't kicked 5 goals for 38 games. Rioli hadn't kicked a certain amount. Cripps hadn't, but they all did it against Essendon on Friday night, Gerard. So that's where it sits for me, and that you can't just keep rolling along with your head in the sand. Things have to be looked at thoroughly and properly.
So what about the way that Carlton did their review, Jerry? Because I know that we were both quite critical about was it external or wasn't it?
That was always external, Carlton's.
Well, no, but it ended up being, if you remember, it was still Luke Sayers and Kane
leading it,
and Kane Little leading it with Jeff Walsh and was it Matthew Pavlich and.
But Kane lost his job.
Yeah.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So at the time, I was critical.
I think that was a bit of a spin with Kane being involved, trying to make it. But it was still inclusive.
But it was still the president who was ultimately. I mean, that's internal. When the president's leading it.
Yep.
I mean, because I don't mind the argument, Gerard, that club administrators and CEOs, their job is to constantly review. Xavier Campbell has told us several times they are constantly reviewing.
I guess the issue, Scoop, is it's not so much the name you put on it, it's who is doing the reviewing. And if you get external people to come in, even if it's led by the president of the footy club, at least there's external minds and eyes having a look at it. And I think this has actually been one of the very clever things that the Kangaroos have done. This is an external review, but it sort of reads like an internal review because Jeff Walsh has actually been a Kangaroo for a long period of time. So, unfortunately, they've lost any relevance, so it's not even being discussed. But it's, I think, a very clever way to get a good look at the whole place, top to bottom.
If Sean Wellman is answerable to his CEO, isn't he? Or not?
No, he's on the board.
No, Sean Wellman's the footy director, so he's answerable to the chairman.
To the chairman, yeah.
Paul Brasher.
So I just wonder whether... Yeah,
it's easy to fix, Lloydie. We can get somebody else from externally to go on and jump on that review. You just got to make your case a bit stronger and you'll get action.
Certainly not me.
All that we know is that Essendon cannot afford to get to 6 weeks into next season and be in a similar position. They need to execute change and they need to do it with some force. Whether that's the coach, whether that's assistant coaches, they need to make a call and they need to make it soon.
3 weeks ago against the Brisbane Lions, they were looking very much like a candidate for top 4.
With 2 goals up.
Looking very much like a candidate to challenge for a flag at a stretch. But 10 quarters later, they are looking like they don't deserve to be in the finals.
They were 5-1 and playing great football, beat Geelong. Yeah, who would have forgot that second half where they just ran over the top of them. I was there to watch them against Essendon live, and they were off from the first bounce. They just didn't have any energy, spark. Essendon hunted them, and then the ball movement. I think that's a real issue for them, the way they're playing. They play Carlton on Friday night this week, so another big stage for them to see how they're travelling. But, Gerard, I just feel they've been really safe. A lot of this has been...
Well, their ball movement's been horrible all year.
Horrible.
Even when they were winning, it didn't have any brand.
Yeah, and now it's been a lot about Max King and what he's doing. But as Brett Ratton said after the game, I wouldn't want to be him either. So now it's on Brett to try and fix this, because I think they've brought some players back in. Hunter Clark hasn't looked fit. He's done a couple of games into it.
Yep.
Bradley Hill's in and out, been inconsistent. Jack Sinclair got sat on the weekend. So they've then got cut out. One of their best players, ball users, got well sat on the weekend. So,
and that's going to happen. That's a challenge, and it's probably good to happen early in this part of the year where he gets another 8 weeks to work through that. So it's going to happen if he becomes an All-Australian half-back. He's got to go through those challenges. What the Saints did really well on the weekend was get everybody back. They intercepted more inside 50s than the Swans would like to acknowledge. They were terrible, the Swans, with their kicks inside forward 50. And yet they could do nothing with it. So we don't know whether they're going down the corridor. We don't know whether they're going to widen the ground, make the ground big, all the usual jargon. There's no semblance of what are they trying to do.
Yeah, you're spot on. Like, make the ground big. They're not switching. They're not opening the corridor up. And that's what forwards cry out for. And that's a challenge now for Brett Ratton to try and salvage this season, because I think they've got a really tough draw. They're already 10th on the ladder. Play Carlton Friday night. If they'd lose to Carlton, I think it's all over for them this year.
Gerard, you in your editorial made reference to the fact that they look dispirited.
Well, they did.
And then also talked about team selection. So 3 major players went out, all for very differing reasons. Jack Higgins was dropped, which I think surprised quite a few, given that at times he's looked like one of their more damaging players, certainly in the forward half. Brad Hill missed for what the club is saying personal reasons. He didn't train Monday or Tuesday. I spoke to the club earlier. They said there's no insight as to whether he's going to play this week. So we're not sure what's going on there. And Paddy Ryder was managed. Now, I know he's 34 and he's had hamstring issues and calf issues, and I know his body's let him down on several occasions.
Yeah, but if he's injured, you say injured. I mean, to me, when I saw that
game to manage him.
When I saw that selection, I thought, what are you managing Paddy Ryder for with this big game coming up? I mean, finals are on the line here, and they just did look a bit dispirited, and maybe the players themselves thought, what are we doing? No Hill, no Ryder. Higgins has dropped. When guys like Jack Higgins get dropped, it's a big decision. I mean, it impacts on people. Sometimes you just have to drop people. But Jack Higgins has been, his form's been fluctuating. But
so
maybe Jack Higgins is a victim of the way the ball's moving.
Were you concerned that there was no response, though, given that that's exactly what Brett Ratton called for?
If I'm Brett Ratton, I'd be gutted by the response, and I know he would be. I mean, he's a great football person. He'd be flat. He'd want to know what the hell's going on, and he'd be looking for some answers this week, and a good test coming up against the Blues. And you can't fail those tests, and that's what they didn't look hungry.
No, and that's what Carlton are, hungry, desperate. And Carlton's backline was the big talking point, but they didn't allow their backline to be under pressure because they smashed Fremantle at the clearance. They hunted and tackled, and that's what St Kilda need to do this week. I thought their ball use, Saints, and their body language extremely poor against Sydney. My top 7 is players on the verge of explosion.
Okay.
So they're not in the elite category yet, but they're on the way there. They'll be there at some point, whether it's this year or early next year. Okay?
What's
the soon to be elite?
Get there. What does
get there will be
in the All-Australian squad?
Yes.
Top 40?
Yes.
Righto.
He's saying elite.
Yep. So I've got at number 7, apologies to Archie Perkins too.
Okay.
He's my apologies.
Jeez.
So at number 7, I've got Isaac Rankin, who has had a great 8 weeks of football.
Indeed.
And looks like the penny has dropped. At number 6, the Lizard.
Nick Blakey.
He's playing wonderful footy.
One of Gerard's favourites.
Yep. So he won't get there this year, will he, the Lizard?
I think his form has been close. He won't be in the All-Australian squad, I wouldn't have thought, unless his last 8 weeks was excellent. I'm staggered that he doesn't get tagged more. I think he's nearly the Swans' most important ball mover.
Number 5 may make the squad this year, Gerard, and that is Todd Marshall. So just starting to kick 3s and 4s every week. Todd Marshall.
Good enough for you to make the squad?
He's around, I'm trying to see if he's...
How many goals he kicked?
Yeah, he's not in the top 10 leaderboard, Sam, so you're probably right.
He needs to explode, I think.
His recent form has been very good.
At number 4 is Carlton's De Koning. Sam?
Yep.
So I think
that's Tom.
Tom, is it? Sorry.
Sam is Geelong's.
Big fan of him. Glad you've finally got on board, Lloydie.
All right. So at number 3, I think without... gone there. I think Luke Jackson will go to a new level like we saw the other night.
Okay.
Sometimes you can sit behind others and I think that'll be this is where the list came from. My number 2, Connor Rozee. So
last 2 weeks have been superb.
And he's been in the coaches' votes about 5 or 6 times Yeah. So you said Tom is Carlton's?
Tom is Carlton's.
Well,
Sam is Geelong.
number one is Sam DeConey of Geelong. I think he's the next big thing in football.
The next big thing
in football.
Can you be that as a full-back, Lloydie?
Well, I think they should be. So I think they need to be recognised, and I think that he could be All-Australian squad this year, potentially make it.